It wasn't just peat that Geoff declined to use. He also did his bit to conserve another fast disappearing part of our natural heritage, those rocky outcrops called limestone pavements.
Since the late 1800s, gardeners have been using Westmoreland water-worn limestone to create ornamental rock gardens. But now there's concern that this unique natural resource is in danger. And this is what it looks like once the stone strippers have been in. The lovely limestone pavements have gone, the soil between the rocks has gone, so of course the plants have gone too. It's a scene of utter devastation. Now I think that most gardeners will be horrified to know this, so for the past few months I've been experimenting with artificial rock. It's made with a homemade concrete called hypertufa, which consists of 2 parts of coir, 2 parts of sharp sand, 1 part of fresh cement and concrete colourant. Now, if you just stick this concrete into the hole, when you dig it out, it'll look like a bit of concrete you've dug out of the ground, and of course that's the last thing you want. So the first job is to line the hole with a bit of strong polythene. Now don't worry about getting lots of creases in it. In fact, really, the more creases there are, the better, because it's those that make the cracks and the crevices in the rock. And then you can fill up with the hypertufa. Now, the next job is to work it up the sides so that you actually make a hollow rock. And of course, this saves on 2 things. It saves the weight of the rock, and it saves quite a lot on the cost of it too. Now, I built this last year, and to make the rocks, I used the same mix that I use for my alpine troughs. Hello, Dennis, you come to help. What I didn't want to do was to use water-worn limestone from our fast disappearing limestone pavements in the north of England. And I hope you won't either. And I'm very happy with my mock sandstone rock garden. Now it's beginning to weather in a little bit.
I think Geoff's greatest contribution was definitely his championing of organic gardening. I mean, without him, I think it could still be seen as the cranky end of the spectrum, really. But he was the leading man on the leading gardening programme, not depending on an arsenal of chemicals, not spraying his roses, not using peat, and showing there was a real alternative. And I mean, he never stood up on his pulpit about it, but, you know, there was no doubt the bigger themes were there underneath, this respect for nature and nature's mechanisms, and, you know, who were we to be throwing spanners in the works, really, and that organic gardening did lead to a much richer encounter with wildlife and nature, and did produce a greater harmony between us and the world around us.
It's been a wonderful year, and I've found it quite easy to keep my small family self-sufficient in vegetables, and we won't have to buy a lot of fruit either. We've been eating our own peas. We're going to make our own wine. We've had marrows and delicious squashes. There have been runner beans and climbing French beans, and towards the end of the summer, plenty of sweet corn. We've had courgettes till they're coming out of our ears, and lots of onions too. Delicious Swiss chard, and now the apples are beginning to come on as well, and of course lots of lettuce right the way through the season. We've had herbs to flavour our food with, plenty of beetroot and lovely crisp and crunchy carrots, and my goodness, we've even had a peach or two. What's more, none of this produce has seen one single drop of chemical at all. The whole thing has been grown entirely organically, and we feel great for it. But perhaps best of all, right the way through the whole operation, the gardens looked wonderful.
Geoff gardening had a spiritual dimension. He wasn't conventionally religious, but being in touch with the soil, working with plants, was his way of plugging into the universe, of being a small part of something infinitely greater that put the vanities and frustrations of everyday life firmly into perspective. And what gave him enormous pleasure was the opportunity his television series gave him of meeting other gardeners who were equally in tune with nature.
The great idea is to have as much colour as possible. I'm very keen on colour.
I have to confess, I've been going around the garden taking notes about the plants that you grow so I can grow them in my own garden.
Good.
And you've got some good old cottage garden favourites there, like Love in a Mist. Now, that's an annual, isn't it? So do you sow it every year?
No, I let it just sow itself where it stands, and I always get very good results. In fact, I have to pull up quite a lot of it.
Do you? Yeah.
Yes, but there's quite a number of plants that I do that with. Poppies, foxgloves, forget-me-nots.
Well, you've got lots of lovely poppies around. Do you find that they cross with each other to produce new colours?
Yes, they do tend to. I think it's the bees. It's just like so many of the flowers, they get crossed by the bees, and you get some exciting things.
It certainly happens with the opium poppies, doesn't it? Which
yeah,
you've
yes,
also got.
yes, those are very strong and very lusty.
And what about planting schemes? I mean, do you stick to a certain scheme?
No, I'm rather haphazard, really. I do think about colour and contrasting colours, but nature is very amazing, and you get some marvellous effects without doing anything.
This is one of the oldest trees in the country. It's the major oak in Sherwood Forest, and they reckon that it's at least 500 years old. And just think about that. When this tree started its life, King Henry VII was on the throne, and Columbus was just setting out on his first voyage to the New World. That's quite amazing. But of course, it's not in nature's plan for anything to live forever, so this venerable old tree is coming towards the end of its life. So what those clever micropropagation scientists have done is to take a tiny part of the tree and to produce several exact copies. Now, one of these little trees will be planted next to the old one, so you could say that this tree will still be alive when I've been dead for 500 years. Now, I don't know about you, but that makes me feel quite humble, and it makes you realise that our species is only a tiny part of the whole natural world, and that nature is not our enemy to be fought against, but it's part of us and we're part of it.
Geoff Hamilton. That's it from Gardener's World this week. We'll be back at the same time next week. Until then, bye-bye.